I still remember the day I met Lily like it was yesterday. It was my sophomore year of college, and I was helping the freshmen move into their dorms. She walked in, arms full of boxes, and our eyes met. I felt this instant connection, like I'd known her my whole life. We started talking, and it turned out we were from neighboring towns. Before I knew it, we were carpooling back home on weekends. Those long drives, filled with laughter and deep conversations, were where I really fell for her. Our relationship grew naturally. We studied together, hung out with friends, and gradually became inseparable. I introduced her to my family, and they loved her immediately. My dad, Brad, especially took a shine to her. He'd always been this larger-than-life figure to me, so seeing him welcome Lily with open arms meant the world. The years flew by. We graduated, got our first jobs, and moved in together. Everything just clicked. Our families meshed so well, it felt like we'd always been one big unit. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have found my soulmate and to have such supportive families behind us. When I decided to propose, I was nervous but confident. I knew Lily was the one. I planned this elaborate setup at our favorite spot by the lake. When she said yes, I felt like I was flying. Our engagement party was a blast, with both our families celebrating together. My dad gave this heartfelt speech about love and commitment that everyone in tears. As we dove into wedding planning, life seemed perfect. Lily and I were on the same page about everything. The venue, the guest list, even napkin colors. I'd catch myself daydreaming at work about our future together. Kids, a house with a big backyard, family barbecues. I wanted it all with her. So looking back now, I guess there were signs, little things that I brushed off at the time. Felt like how my dad would call Lily more often than usual. At first I thought it was sweet. He'd say he was calling about family stuff or to get her opinion on birthday gifts. But then I noticed how long these calls would last. One day I picked up Lily's phone when it rang. It was my dad, and he sounded annoyed. He quickly made up some excuse about wanting to surprise me with something and needing Lily's help. I felt a twinge of unease, but I pushed it aside. This was my dad and my fiancé, the two people I trusted most in the world. What could possibly be wrong? There were other moments too. Times when I'd walk into a room and feel like I'd interrupted something. My dad and Lily would be talking, heads close together, and they'd jump apart when they saw me. But they'd always have a reasonable explanation, and I'd tell myself I was being paranoid. I remember one family dinner where my mum asked Lily about work, and my dad answered for her. She knew details about her projects that even I didn't know. When I mentioned it later, Lily just said they'd been chatting about it earlier. It made sense, but something felt off. These incidents piled up, each one small enough to ignore on its own. But now, thinking back, I can see how they formed a pattern I was too blind, too trusting to recognize. I wish I could go back and shake some sense into myself. Tell that naive, love-struck version of me to open his eyes, to see what was happening right in front of him. But I was so caught up in the fantasy of our perfect life together, I couldn't imagine anything threatening it. If only I'd known what I know now, if only I'd paid attention to those red flags instead of dismissing them. Maybe I could have prevented the storm that was about to hit, the betrayal that would shatter my world and change everything I thought I knew about love, family, and trust. I left for work that Thursday morning like any other day. Lily had made breakfast, and we shared a quick kiss before I headed out. Everything seemed normal, routine. If only I'd known how my world was about to shatter. Midday, I realized I'd forgotten some crucial paperwork for an afternoon meeting. Annoyed at myself, I decided to swing by the apartment during lunch to grab it. As I pulled up, I noticed a car that looked eerily similar to Dad's parked outside. A twinge of unease hit me, but I brushed it off. Probably just a coincidence, right? I fumbled with my keys at the door, distracted by thoughts of the upcoming meeting. The moment I stepped inside, something felt off. Clothes were strewn across the hallway floor. My stomach dropped. Then I heard it. The unmistakable sounds coming from our bedroom. My feet moved of their own accord, carrying me down the hall. My mind raced, desperately trying to come up with any explanation other than the obvious. I pushed open the bedroom door. There they were. Lily and Dad, naked, our bed, the bed I'd shared with Lily for years, the bed where I'd proposed to her. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move. It was like my brain short-circuited, unable to process the scene before me. Then everything hit at once. Rage, disgust, heartbreak, betrayal. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. I needed proof. Needed to make sure this nightmare was real. Started recording, capturing their tangled bodies, their faces contorted in pleasure. Only when I flipped on the light did they notice me. Dad's eyes went wide with panic. He scrambled to cover himself, looking like a deer in headlights. Lily just stared, frozen in horror, her mouth opening and closing without a sound. Ethan. Dad's voice was strangled. He stumbled towards me, reaching for the phone. Son, please stop filming. We can talk about this. I didn't let him finish. My fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling to the floor. He hit the ground hard, out cold. Lily shrieked, finally finding her voice. She clutched the sheets to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I worried about your lover, but nothing to say to your fiancé, I spat. The words tasted like acid in my mouth. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but revulsion. This woman I'd loved, trusted, planned to spend my life with, she was a stranger to me now. Both of you, I said, my voice cold and detached. Be gone before I get back. Or I swear to God I'll send this video to everyone we know. I turned and walked out. My legs felt like lead, each step an effort. The weight of what had just happened crashed down on me. So my fiancé, my father, the two people I trusted most in the world, betraying me in the worst possible way. As I stumbled to my car, my phone buzzed. A text from work asking where I was, the meeting. It seemed so trivial now, so far removed from the wreckage of my life. I sat behind the wheel, staring blankly ahead. Where could I go? What could I do? Everything I believed in, everything I built my life around, had just crumbled to dust. I stared at the steering wheel, my knuckles white from gripping it too tightly. The drive to my parents' house had been a blur, my mind a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't begin to process. As I stepped out of the car, the familiar sight of my childhood home felt like a punch to the gut. Everything was the same, yet nothing would ever be the same again. Before I could even reach the front door, it flew open. Mom stormed out, her face contorted with rage. I'd never seen her like this before. How dare you show your face here, she spat, her words dripping with venom. After what you did to your father. I froze, confusion washing over me. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me, Ethan. Your father told me everything. How you attacked him when he tried to break up a fight between you and Lily. I can't believe you'd be so violent. My stomach dropped, of course. Dad had gotten to her first. Of course, he'd twisted the story to make himself the hero. I felt sick. Mom, that's not what happened, I started, but she cut me off. Save it, Ethan. I don't want to hear your excuses. Your father would never lie to me. And Lily. She's devastated. How could you treat her like that? Each word was like a knife to my heart. My own mother, the woman who'd raised me, who I thought would always have my back, was choosing to believe the lies of a cheater over her own son. You don't understand, I tried again, my voice cracking. Dad and Lily. No, you don't understand, she interrupted, her voice rising. Your father loves you. He was trying to help, and you repaid him with violence. I raised you better than that. I couldn't take it anymore. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, it all came crashing down on me at once. They were fucking. I shouted, my voice raw with pain. I caught them in bed together. In my bed. Mom stumbled back as if I'd physically struck her. Her face paled, disbelief etched in every line. What are you saying? Dad and Lily have been having an affair, I said, my voice cold and detached. I walked in on them yesterday. That's why I hit him. That's the truth he conveniently left out. She shook her head, desperately clinging to her denial. No, that can't be true. Your father would never. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I pulled up the video. See for yourself, I said, holding it out to her. Mom's eyes widened in horror as she watched the footage. I saw the moment reality shattered her world, just as it had shattered mine. She dropped the phone, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a sob. I didn't know, she whispered, her voice small and broken. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. But it was too late. The damage was done. Her instant willingness to believe the worst of me, to side with Dad without even hearing my side of the story, it cut deeper than I could have imagined. You're right, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. You should have. I turned to leave, unable to bear the sight of her anguish any longer. As I reached my car, I looked back one last time. You betrayed me too, Mom, I said softly. by choosing to believe him over me, by not even giving me a chance to explain. With that, I got in my car and drove away, leaving behind the shattered remnants of what I once thought was a loving family. The tears I'd been holding back finally fell as I realized I was truly alone now, betrayed by everyone I'd ever loved and trusted. I walked out of my parents' house, my entire world crumbling around me. The weight of betrayal pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I got in my car and just sat there staring blankly at the steering wheel. Where could I go now? The apartment I shared with Lily was tainted, my childhood home a den of lies. I drove aimlessly for hours, trying to process everything that had happened. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, the sun was setting. The thought of stepping into that space, where just this morning I'd been blissfully unaware of the deception surrounding me, made me physically ill. I steeled myself and went inside. The bedsheets were still rumpled, a stark reminder of what I'd witnessed. Bile rose in my throat. I couldn't stay here. In a frenzy, I started gathering Lily's things. Clothes, books, trinkets, anything that was hers went into boxes and bags. I worked mechanically, trying not to think about the memories attached to each item. Her favorite sweater, the one I'd given her for our first Christmas together. The framed photo of us at the beach last summer. It all meant nothing now. As I packed, I kept finding reminders of my parents. A card from my mum for my last birthday. The watch my dad had given me when I graduated college. The sight of these once cherished items now filled me with a mixture of rage and despair. I couldn't bear to look at them anymore. Into a box they went, shoved into the back of a closet. By midnight, I'd cleared out every trace of Lily and my parents from the apartment. Boxes and bags lined the entryway, ready for her to collect. I sent a terse text to her parents, asking them to come get her stuff. Then I turned off my phone, not wanting to deal with the inevitable flood of messages and calls. The apartment felt hollow now, stripped of the life we'd built together. I collapsed onto the couch, exhaustion finally catching up with me. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together, heard their excuses and pleas. The next few days passed in a blur. I called in sick to work, unable to face the outside world. I barely ate, barely slept. Everything reminded me of her, of them. On the third day, I realized I needed help. I couldn't keep living like this. I made 2 important calls, one to my doctor to schedule an STD test, and another to find a therapist. The STD test was humiliating but necessary. How many times had Lily been with me after being with my father? The thought made me nauseous. Finding a therapist took longer. I didn't want someone who would just pat me on the back and tell me everything would be okay. I needed someone who could help me make sense of this mess, who could give me tools to deal with the anger and pain that threatened to consume me. I finally found Dr. Reeves, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who specialized in trauma and betrayal. Our first session was brutal. I poured out everything that had happened, my words stumbling over each other as I tried to articulate the depth of my pain. Dr. Reeves listened intently, her face a mask of professional calm. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "Ethan, what happened to you is a profound betrayal. It's okay to not be okay right now. We're going to work through this together, but it's going to take time." Those words were like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. For the first time since that fateful day, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could get through this. As the weeks passed, I threw myself into therapy. Dr. Reeves became the one person I could talk to without feeling judged or pitied. She helped me navigate the roller coaster of emotions, the numbness, the rage, the crushing sadness. But even with therapy, I couldn't stay in that apartment. Every corner held a memory, every room a reminder of what I'd lost. I needed a fresh start, somewhere far from the ghosts of my past. That's how I ended up buying a run-down cabin on the outskirts of the city. It was an impulse purchase, fueled by my desperate need to escape. The cabin needed a lot of work, but that was exactly what I needed. A project to keep my hands and mind busy. Moving day was bittersweet. As I packed up the last of my things, I realized I was closing a chapter of my life. The Ethan who had lived here, who had loved Lily and trusted his family implicitly, was gone. I didn't know who I was anymore, but I knew I couldn't be that person again. The cabin was a far cry from the modern apartment I was used to. No central heating, spotty plumbing, and a roof that leaked in 3 different places. But as I stood on the porch that first night, looking out at the dense forest surrounding me, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in weeks. I threw myself into renovating the cabin. Every day brought a new challenge, fixing the leaky roof, updating the ancient electrical system, tearing out moldy drywall. It was hard, physical work that left me exhausted at the end of each day. But it was exactly what I needed. When I was working, I didn't have time to dwell on the betrayal or wallow in self-pity. The nights were still hard. In the quiet darkness, with no distractions, the pain would come rushing back. Some nights I'd wake up in a cold sweat, the image of Lily and my father burned into my mind. Other nights, I'd lie awake for hours, replaying every moment of our relationship, wondering how I could have been so blind. The months since I caught Lily and my father had been a blur of anger, pain, and isolation. I'd thrown myself into work and renovating that old cabin, anything to keep my mind off the betrayal that had shattered my world. As I stirred my coffee absently, I barely recognized the woman sitting across from me. My mom looked older and more worn. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears, blubbering apologies. I just sat there numb. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I was wrong, so wrong." I nodded mechanically. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but a larger part was still raw from her initial reaction. The memory of her accusing me, choosing to believe Dad's lies over my truth, still stung. "I threw your father out that same day after I saw the video. I've hired a lawyer. We're getting divorced." The news should have brought some satisfaction, but I felt nothing. Good was all I could muster. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Ethan, please. I want to make this right. Tell me how to fix this." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. "Mom, I don't know if this can be fixed. You chose him over me. You believed I would attack my own father for no reason. Do you have any idea how much that hurt?" Her face crumpled. "I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But you're my son, Ethan. I love you. Please don't shut me out completely." I sighed, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. "Look, I'm not saying never. But this has to be on my terms, at my pace. I need time." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I understand. Whatever you need, I'll do it." So we sat in uncomfortable silence for a while. I was about to make my excuses and leave when she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something else you should know." I braced myself, wondering what other bombshell could possibly drop. "It's about Lily," she said, and I felt my chest tighten. She's pregnant." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What?" I choked out. She doesn't know if it's yours or your father's." I stood up so fast my chair screeched against the floor. Several heads turned our way, but I didn't care. My vision tunneled, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Ethan, wait." Mom called, but I was already halfway to the door. I burst out of the diner, gulping in the cool air. My mind was reeling. Lily pregnant. The baby could be mine. Or my father's. My stomach lurched, and I barely made it to a nearby trash can before emptying its contents. As I leaned against the wall, trying to steady myself, I felt my phone buzz. A text from an unknown number. With shaking hands, I opened it. "Ethan, it's Lily. We need to talk. Please." I stared at the screen, feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Everything I'd done to rebuild my life, to move on, suddenly felt meaningless. The past I'd tried so hard to escape was crashing back into my present, demanding to be faced. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and made a decision. It was time to confront the mess I'd been running from. For better or worse, I couldn't keep hiding anymore. I sat in my truck, staring at the text from Lily. My hands were shaking, and I felt like I was going to be sick. The news my mom had dropped on me at the diner was still echoing in my head. Lily was pregnant. And it could be mine. Or my dad's. The thought made my stomach churn. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I'd been hiding from this for months, burying myself in work on the cabin, avoiding calls, dodging reality. But now it was staring me in the face, demanding to be dealt with. I typed out a reply to Lily, agreeing to meet. As soon as I hit send, I wanted to take it back, but I knew I couldn't run forever. The next few days were a blur. I barely slept, my mind racing with all the possible outcomes. What if the baby was mine? Could I ever look at that child without seeing the betrayal? And if it was my dad's, I couldn't even bring myself to finish that thought. When the day came to meet Lily, I felt like I was walking to my own execution. We agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop, somewhere public where I wouldn't lose my shit. I got there early, wanting to have the upper hand. When Lily walked in, my heart clenched. She looked different. Tired, stressed, a small bump visible under her loose shirt. For a split second, I remembered why I had loved her. Then the image of her with my dad flashed through my mind, and any warm feelings evaporated. "Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for meeting me." I didn't respond, just gestured for her to sit. She lowered herself into the chair across from me, her eyes never leaving my face. I don't know where to start," she began. "How about the truth?" I said, my voice cold. For once. Lily flinched at my tone. "I deserve that," she said. "I know I hurt you, Ethan. More than I can ever express. What I did, it was unforgivable." "You're damn right it was," I snapped. "You didn't just cheat on me, Lily. You cheated on me with my father. In our bed. How could you do that?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I don't know," she whispered. "It just happened. Brad was always so charming, so attentive." Yeah, I was confused and flattered. "And God, Ethan, I'm so sorry. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I am truly, deeply sorry." I laughed bitterly. "You're right. It doesn't mean anything now." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. "The baby," I finally said, forcing the words out. "Is it mine?" Lily's hand went to her stomach, a protective gesture that made my heart ache. She took a deep breath, clearly steeling herself for what she was about to say. "No," she said softly. "It's Brad's." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Even though I'd known it was a possibility, hearing it confirmed was devastating. I closed my eyes, trying to process this new reality. Are you keeping it?" I asked, not sure if I wanted to know the answer. Lily nodded. "Yes, I know it's complicated, but it's my baby. I can't not love it, even considering how it came to be." I stood up abruptly, needing to move, to do something. I can't do this," I said, my voice breaking. "I thought I could handle this conversation, but I can't." "Ethan, please," Lily pleaded, reaching for my hand. I jerked away from her touch. "Don't," I said harshly. "You don't get to touch me. Not after what you did." Lily's face crumpled, but I couldn't bring myself to care. All the pain, all the betrayal, it was all rushing back. I needed to get out of there. "I hope you and my dad are very happy together," I spat, the words tasting like poison in my mouth. "Enjoy your new family." I stormed out of the coffee shop, ignoring Lily's calls behind me. I made it to my truck before the tears started falling. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the pain. It was over. Really, truly over. Lily was having my dad's baby. There was no going back from this, no chance of reconciliation. The life I had imagined for myself was gone, shattered beyond repair. As I drove away, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. The uncertainty was gone, replaced by a harsh truth. But at least now I knew. I could start to move on, to rebuild my life without the specter of what if hanging over me. It wasn't much, but it was something. A tiny step forward in the long journey of healing that lay ahead of me. I sat in my therapist's office, Dr. Reeves' calm presence a stark contrast to the turmoil in my mind. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on me, threatening to crush me beneath its enormity. But I was here, still breathing, still fighting. "How are you feeling today, Ethan?" Dr. Reeves asked, her voice gentle. So I let out a long breath. "Honestly, I don't know anymore. It's like I'm numb, but also in pain. Does that even make sense?" She nodded, encouraging me to continue. "So my dad, Brad," I corrected myself, the word dad tasting bitter on my tongue, "he's been calling, leaving messages." Dr. Reeves leaned forward slightly. "And how does that make you feel?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like I want to throw my phone off a cliff. I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated. He's full of excuses, you know. Talking about how he was weak and how he made a mistake. As if fucking his son's fiancé is just some minor slip-up. The anger bubbled up inside me, hot and familiar. I'd been living with him for months now, a constant companion. "Have you listened to the messages?" Dr. Reeves asked. "Yeah, once. Then I deleted them all. I couldn't bear to hear his voice again." I shook my head, trying to clear the memory of those pathetic voicemails. He keeps saying he wants to explain to make things right. But there's nothing he could say that would fix this. Nothing. Dr. Reeves nodded, her expression understanding. "It's okay to feel that way, Ethan. You've been through a significant trauma. and it's natural to want to protect yourself from further pain. I nodded, grateful for her validation. I can't see him as my father anymore. He's just Brad. A man who betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive him. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone, Dr. Reeves reminded me. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders at her words. Yeah, you're right. I think that chapter of my life is closed. Brad is dead to me now. As I said the words out loud, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. It was like cutting off a gangrenous limb, painful but necessary for survival. How are you coping with everything else? Dr. Reeves asked, steering the conversation gently. I took a moment to consider. It's getting better, I think. Slowly. The cabin renovation has been good for me. Keeps my hands busy, you know? And my mind. Dr. Reeves smiled encouragingly. That's excellent, Ethan. Physical activity and having a project to focus on can be very therapeutic. I nodded, thinking about the progress I'd made on the cabin. Yeah, it's something that's just mine, you know? Something I'm building from the ground up, no memories attached to it. And your social life? Have you been reaching out to friends? I shifted in my seat. A little. It's hard, I kind of shut everyone out for a while there. But I've been trying to reconnect. Had dinner with my old college roommate last week. It was nice. Normal. That's a big step, Ethan. I'm proud of you for putting yourself out there. Her words warmed me, though I still felt a twinge of discomfort at the praise. Thanks. It's not easy, but I'm trying. As our session wound down, I found myself reflecting on the past few months. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest that flared up at unexpected moments. But it no longer consumed me entirely. I was learning to live with it, to move forward despite it. Remember, Ethan, Dr. Reeves said as I stood to leave, healing is a process. It takes time, and it's not always linear. But you're making progress, even if it doesn't always feel like it. I nodded, grateful for her steady presence in my life. Thanks, Doc. See you next week. As I drove back to my cabin, I thought about the future. For the first time in months, it didn't seem like an endless, bleak expanse. There was a glimmer of something, not quite hope, but possibility. The idea that maybe someday I could find peace. And I knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. The betrayal had left deep scars, and trust didn't come easily to me anymore. But as I pulled up to my cabin, saw the progress I'd made with my own two hands, I felt a spark of determination. I might never fully trust again, but I was learning how to move forward. And for now, that was enough.